Hi everyone, so now we've spoken about the familiarity, step-in and new distributions of Linux and the variants and some of specifically what operating systems we would use for what. We're now going to really delve deep into sort of the Linux command line interface and the shells that we use, and really look at some of the commands, some of the tools, how we interact with the operating system itself, and maybe create a few files, play around with those files, install a bit of software, and play around with that software as well. So just really get familiar with the Linux operating system through the command line and using basic commands. See you in a sec. So I've currently got on the screen with the left hand side, I've got the GitHub repository for the course. Lesson number 4 is Linux repository, and further down the screen, which I'm sort of going to reveal step by step, are some of the notes I've already typed up just in preparation for this lesson. And as I go through, I will be editing them just to make sure that they reflect the lesson that I'm sort of delivering. On the right hand side, I've got an Ubuntu box, which we used in the previous video, but I've cleared the screen using one of the commands we're going to be covering, and I've cleared the command line terminal, but we're going to be really just hammering down on those sort of basic familiar commands and starting from the top. So just sort of starting from the top of the repository itself, I've got the links for the previous versions and what you can download those ISOs. So here we go, Linux basic commands. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is the prompt, and that being a prompt to me on the other side of the screen, quite nice. What we can see here is this prompt here that it displays a lot of information to me. So it displays the user I'm currently logged on as, which is called user. That's bad administration, naming a user because that identifies from the outside in what level of access that person has. So being a user, you'd then think privesk on that, and then you'd think of start tools like linpeas, but that's a whole different CTF world. That's a different world. This is initial introduction, cool. But you will go onto that stage later. I'd say as soon as you've covered these lessons, get onto Over the Wire, get familiar with that, and I'll probably do a top-up video on Over the Wire and sort of trying to get from 0 to hero on that, and up to sort of level 15, 16, 17, 18, and getting real familiar and sort of making those commands second nature, and then straight on CTS, sort of build your knowledge on sort of vulnerabilities and scanning and the tools, and building some of that red teaming skills, which as soon as you're familiar with red teaming, then you can employ them in a blue team environment. Right, calm down. That's cybersecurity just as a very big shell, and that's what we're going to be talking about in a sec. So we've got user, we've got our host name, which is test VM, we've got our colon, which then denotes where we're currently located, or our present working directory within Linux. Okay, so we're currently sat on the desktop, and that weird little wave there is called tilde. Okay, that is located on the right hand side of your keyboard, shift and probably the immediate button above it. This $sign or £sign, depending on what country you come from, that $sign indicates we currently have user rights. So if we have administrator rights or root privilege within Linux, we will see that a hash. We'll see that as I think that might actually be a pound. the chevron or the hash. Cool. Right. So yeah. That one. That's what you'll see at the end if we've got root privilege, and you'll probably see the term root there. There are different ways of accessing root privilege and administrator rights, but we'll be covering that in a minute. So cool, we've covered off the prompt. So we've got a home folder, that indicates user, that indicates root. Happy days. So one thing I'm going to cover is, first of all, I'm going to run through without telling you about the help features just yet, or the hidden files, because that's to come, but there's some really good help features. So our first real command, and when we talk about navigating the file system or navigating a folder structure effectively, is to see where we are. I know our prompt tells us where we are, tilde, desktop, so that tilde indicates our home folder, and that's our home folder for that user. So if our home folder for a root user will be a different place. So that's the home folder for our user, and our home folder for this user, by typing pwd, is located here. So it's located, this slash is root. So top of the tree, so sort of folder structure all the way down, top of the tree, root home, user, desktop, and then in that desktop folder, in that user folder, we've got a few others. So we can change directory into them, but we can see where we are by using pwd present working directory. Brilliant. And that gives us literally, so that tilde basically indicates that. And we're seeing straight away just a couple of different terms we're going to be using. So this is called the absolute path. So that is absolute from root. Root, home, user, desktop. Happy days, that's where we're sat. The shortcut path is tilde, which is home directory, desktop. So that's where we're sat. Actually, the home directory, the desktop is here. So whatever we create in the desktop, we'll see here being the desktop. But let's see if I can, oh yeah, control tab work then. That's cool. Right, let's change directory into our home directory, but using the absolute path. So to change directory, as we can see here, I'm not going to look at this side so much. I'm going to talk and hopefully explain things quite slowly, but you can sort of follow along in the left hand side, and these notes are going to be available online as soon as this video is published anyway. So just look at the GitHub repository. It's amazing. Only building every day, sort of, and getting more refined, and any spelling issues generally get taken out as I sort of QC it at a later date. So change directory is CD. So to change directory using the absolute path, so that's from the top of the tree all the way down. So that's like, if you talk Windows, it's not quite the C drive, it's almost above the C drive. So it's my computer C drive, because you've also got P drive, E drive, H drive, CD-ROM, or DVD. Then you've got, let's say, Win32, Sys32, and then you can go into your program files from there, or users. Cool, I'll slow down. So let's change directory into our user folder, so our home directory, but using the absolute path. So if I go change directory, type home, and you have to type it wholly, but you don't. So this is where we're going to learn our first help feature. Okay, so within Linux, we use what's known as shells. So, like for example, command prompt and PowerShell, they're two different softwares. It's almost like if you use command, as soon as you're familiar with PowerShell and you go back to command prompt, you're like, oh my god, this is awful. But it's the same as some Linux shells. There's really old ones, there's really new ones, and a lot of the different distros. So Mint might use a different distribution. We're currently using Bash as our shell. It's really forgiving, and that's why we sort of like doing a Bash on Ubuntu, because the two hand in hand are really good for learning on. That it's really forgiving, loads of enabling stuff as well, and it's very sort of colour orientated as well. It's really bright, vibrant. It'll tell you different, like we'll see the different types of files come up in different colours as well. It's really good. So we've got change directory home, and if I type user but halt there, so I've typed US, and I know I just need to type ER and hit enter to change directory into home user or root home user. I can hit tab and it'll complete it for me, providing there's no other folders. If there was users and I hit tab, it'll go user, and it'll be like, it wouldn't give me the final slash. Then I could hit tab again, or type S and have tab, and then it could finish off for me, because there's no other sort of folders called users or user in that. I can hit tab and it'll finish it for me, and we can go in. And now we can see we've lost the desktop on the prompt, and we've gone back to home user, and we've got just the tilde a little bit there. So I'm just going to leave you to look at that a sec. Have a little bit of my coffee. Cool. So that's using the absolute path. I'm going to change directory into desktop again, and then change directory using the shortcut method. So if I just change directory, and I don't need to do it from all the way down, we're sort of using a relative position from where we are, and it's half relative really. It's not full relative, because I'll show you what full relative is in a minute. And I don't mean family, I don't mean aunties, uncles, for example. So if I just change directory into desktop, because I know it's there, because we've read it before, hit enter, I didn't type the whole thing out, I just hit tab, and it was like, bang, you're in. Cool, so we're sat in the same position again, PWD, and we're sat here, nicey nice. So what I want to do is change directory into, I'm going to go back into my home folder where I've got a few different folders, which we'll see in a sec using different command. I love this stage. It's just like one little petal falls off on another and another, and all we know is we've got thousands of layers of knowledge coming to us. It's always the best. So we've got desktop. I'm going to change directory tilde, and tilde is the shortcut. So what we've done is change directory into a home folder. Instead of typing all of that, we've now gone straight into our home folder. pwd. Happy days. We know exactly where we are. I can change directory into desktop using the shortcut method. So change directory tilde/desk, and let's do tab. Oh, see what I mean? When I hit tab and there's other options available, if I hit tab, it's not doing it, but it will tell me what's available. This is why Bash is really good as a shell, and it really supports sort of learning. So we've got desktop, downloads, and documents available. Don't know why I did them two, then that one. But I'm going to go to desktop. Oh, and yeah, see, if I hit tab now, I'm going, why is it not working? Why is it not working? Because it's case sensitive. Because in command line, it does matter. Just take your time and try not to make errors. A lot of the times you end up making errors and you can correct them. There's a little command after, which I'll show you is quite dangerous. And I'll do two things at the end of the lesson, which will sort of make the world never ruin the world. But it just proves how powerful the CLI is, but also proves to the point, always use the lowest level privilege account you can at any one time. So where I'm as a user, I'm already jumping about the file system, but in our own little area, it's the same as you could do logged on as a normal Windows user if you've got access to command prompt or PowerShell, but obviously within a Windows domain, a lot of them are locked down through group policy. Cool. So we're on our desktop and we want to change directory into documents now. So I could do, I'm going to show you all the different variants. So I could do change directory, root, home, user, and I'm tabbing this and it makes it a lot easier. Documents. So I could just hit enter and we do that. So that's using the absolute path. Could use a shortcut path and go tilde documents and tabbing. If I tab it and it works, it proves that the command will work as well. It's sort of like quite forgiving in that way. We know that the fact tab work means if I hit enter it will work, so it'll change directory in. But the next one I want to do, I know we could, like, if we're in home folder, just type, if we were in the home folder, just type change directory documents, and that's all good. But we're sat in desktop, and I want to jump up one, then go down into documents. So to do that, we're going to use the relative method. And getting your mind around this is sort of really key. That's why I've written it down here. So we've got absolute path and then change directory using the absolute path. We've got relative, so we've got shortcut there, which is really easy to understand. It's just takes to your own folder and you're away. Changing via relative path. So that's so we can either use double or single dot. Single dot is current directory. Double dot means up one. Okay, so if I change directory to double dot, I've got this in edit mode on the GitHub, so let's be careful on that side. But the whole point of GitHub is version control, so I can go back and change to a different version if I save that, but hopefully I won't. So change directory double dot. That will put me up to my home folder. Slash, and then I'm going to use tab as well just to prove this works. So if I go documents, I can hit enter now, and I'm in documents. So I've changed directory from where I am, got up one, walked along and dropped into the other one. Quite simple. What I could also do is I'm going to go back, desktop, wasn't it? Right, I'm sat in desktop, pwd, check on desktop, always nice. Then what I want to do is change directory using the current, so I can say where I am now, go up one and then into documents, and that works. So we can use single or double dot. Obviously we're just sort of making it longer. So the most efficient way really is using either shortcut or relative, or even just using the short path relative and just saying almost change directory documents and just allowing the shell to do the work for us and just saying jump straight into there and then you're in documents. Cool. But if you're sort of new or you wanted to find control where everything is, you can really just use the absolute. So change directory, which is the absolute path, root, home, user, documents, and just jumped into the exact same folder that we sat in previous using the absolute path. So that command didn't achieve anything, but at least we're aware of the 3 different methods: absolute, relative, or shortcut. Brilliant. We're going to use them throughout the sort of next set of commands as well. So we can use the next command, which is the list command, ls, from using those exact methods. So if I wanted to look at a file or a list of files in a different location, and using absolute, shortcut, relative, and it sort of all fits in. That's where the core knowledge comes in. There's loads of the stuff that you learn now early on. So these 3 different path routes almost, and then you can just use them in relative to every different command. So it sort of all works together. It's quite good. So next command is list, ls. And I'll give you a moment just to sort of maybe look at the screen and process things. That's why having a coffee is not a bad thing. But it comes with different options. So every command, the same as ping, for example, you can do ping-t, which is continuous, or which is every command will give you the options. That's where we get our power from. It's configuring it, using a tool and refining that tool to do what we want. So instead of just going, for example, there's nothing in here. So if I do within documents, if I do ls, there's nothing. If I change directory to my home folder, where have I gone? Be careful what you type, people. Change directory tilde. That's my home directory. If I do pwd, just check where I am. Home user, happy days. So we're using the commands where we are. I use these all the time just to confirm. Even though the prompt tells you, sometimes you might be in a different location using a different method, like a link or a sort of soft or hard link, for example. Cool. Then we use ls. We've got a few folders here, and it's quite clumsy just to use a command without any options or extensions or even putting 2 commands together using pipe. We're going to cover that, don't worry. So we can see our folders, and it's coming up a different colour. If it was a file, it'd be white. If it's a folder or directory, and these terms sort of flow, it should be a directory. These folders and directories come up as blue. Cool. Let's use extensions. So I don't know what extensions exist for ls. Let's just pretend. Brand new, just learning out. So there's a couple of help features that we can use. So we've already talked about tab. So change directory, and we've spoken about tab, for example. So the first real help feature is the help function, or question mark, or help. So normally it comes in as an option itself as help. So with the command ls tac help, let's have a look. So this is a text document which contains a lot of information about the file itself. So I'm just scrolling up on my mouse on this, so we can see ls is list information about files or directories, and we can see -a, capital A, almost all, does not list implied or and, so that's actually neater. So we'll see these single and double dots within the folders in a little bit, and that capital A is quite neat actually. We can see, so what I want to do is a long list. So L is using long list formats. So that's basically when you look at a file and its description. So from that we contain a lot. So let's go for it. So we're going to use L and A quite fluidically, and it's something that I always use. So ls space -L is long list, so we can see our folders in quite a detailed view. So what we've got, it says current total folders and files is 32, so that's 32 within all of these. And you might go, well, a lot of these are empty, and we'll see from there in a minute, but that's a directory or a drive. We've got read, write, execute, read and execute, and read and execute. So this is permissions. So this is the owner, the group, and the user. Okay, so the users from this, every user should be able to, who's in the user group and uses the owner. So we've got read, write, execute over anything here. over anything within. You've got read, write, execute rights over this desktop, which we should have. We should be able to create a file and delete it because of that read, write, execute permission. We've got the owner, we've got the user, we've got the file size, so 4096 bytes, and we've got date of last modification, and this is its file location as a uniset number within the file folder structure, so that you might see some big numbers appear there. Cool, happy days. So we've got all these directories available to us. We can change directory into music and see if there's anything in here. So ls, and you might go ls space -l, just see if there's anything. And then what we'll do is really make sure, because and there's a couple of different ways. Some people like doing it like that and breaking each option in their own different area, but you can put them together, smash them together, and hit enter, and we can see there's a total of 8 files, but that's within so these are implied or implicit areas, the single and double dot, and we use them in the current, so we use them to jump about using the current area, and the double dot to go up. So they're just sort of file locator areas, really, and they're just used to be used as part of the functions. So I don't worry about them as much. So I've never really interacted with the single and double dot, but it's often places where you can hide things, but that's separate. Cool. So change directory, double dot, and come out of music. I jumped into music because obviously within Windows you end up with like I remember I think it was XP had what was the band? Weezer, wasn't it? And it was like the Happy Days theme tune. So we don't, unlike Windows, we don't get gifted with any music, but it's fine. We could probably run the music file straight from command line as well if you just type open. But we can also interrogate the file and we go, is it? And that's probably quite a good experiment. Is the music file hiding anything? So we can run loads of commands like string. So we can run string or strings against a file to see what strings of files are in that file. So within an image, shouldn't really contain any strings, but a text file should. So we can look at files within the command interface. I'm going to add it in just because I said it. So hold on, I'll add this in here. So cat more less clear echo. I'm just going to go add strings. Now that I've added it, now that I've added it into the list, I'm going to have to go through it. So we'll just jump back in. We're not too far away anyway. So we've changed directory using all different methods. We've done ls and its options, and often this alternative is a lot quicker to run. So we've got, instead of doing ls space -la on, for example, I can do absolute path. If I wanted to do within my home folder using the absolute path, home user, and tab it out, enter. So we can see there we've got quite a mixture of things. So this is my home area, and even within Windows you'll end up with a couple of little hidden files and text documents, for example, just to customize your sort of desktop and to customize your user experience. So this is all that gubbins behind the scenes, really. The white ones are text files, and this is what I sort of quickly scrolled past earlier. These dots are hidden, so they're hidden unless we use the A function. So if we use small a or capital A, we can see all hidden files. So this is a hidden folder, like .local or .ssh, that's a SSH configuration. Sudo admin user successful, so that's a log for our sudo usage. But we'll talk about it in a minute. I'm going to look at this bash history. So bash, as I said earlier, is the shell or the sort of user layer that we're playing with. And history is our command history. So that ultimately is telling us what commands we've used. So if I just sort of jump into that. So before I jump into it, I just want to sort of summarize this. So the easiest way, instead of typing ls space -la on loads of stuff, a quick version is ll, long list. It's the exact same as running that, but if you just type ll, it's more operational. So it's like if you do often within Cisco, I'm just trying to make an example, copy, run, start, and instead of typing people will type that, they'll type wr. It's like typing that So it's almost an alternative, and it's a very quick, not so dirty method of doing it, but it's a very quick method of doing it. So ll will do the same as ls space minus la, and also because you're typing 5 characters, 6 characters with a space, you're only typing 2, so it's a lot quicker. Cool. So you get the same output, and you can run it from using the same methods. And we've just done a shortcut there. So we're running LL with the same sort of file path orientation we're used to. Brilliant. So LL long list, really quick, very operational way. So once you get more familiar, you do learn a few of these shortcuts. There's ones that I'm not even familiar with from being a sort of Linux administrator at some points in my career. But let's talk about now files. So what I want to do is cat files. So we can open files within the CLI. So what we're going to do is open this bash history file. Cool. I'm just going to do. So let's look at opening a text document on the command line interface. So what we can use initially is cat. So that opens the file. Cat, and what we're going to do is open up the bash history with the dot in front of it, which indicates it's hidden. So if I do tab, obviously there's loads of hidden files. So if I type bash and underscore, there's still a few with underscore. So it's better to type it almost in full. And we can see there we've got a lot of commands we previously typed and they're added to the top. So we've got loads that we've already played with, ls, and we've been playing with down. So this is even stuff that I've been playing with over the previous weeks. And clear, just to clear the screen. And then if I do it again, so if I go to cat history, and I can recall previous commands by pressing the up arrow, another very helpful feature of bash. I can press up or down to get to what command I want to run and change it slightly. But if I run it again, and we can see half the screen is, half the text file of this, no matter what it is off the screen. So cat is good for small files and just opening them up, but not great for interrogating larger files. So if I want to interrogate larger files, I use the command more. So more.bash underscore history. And what we can do is view it page by page or line by line. So if I hit enter, it's going to do it line by line. And if I hit spacebar, it'll do it page by page. So we're literally jumping through. I want to do this quickly because I don't want you to see too many of the forthcoming commands we're going to be running. Cool. So more is view the page, but in constructive ways. If I want to use a more feature-rich version of that, we can use less. So less on .bash underscore history, and we can see we're in a different bit of the bottom of the screen. Looks a little bit different. So we're sort of in the file a little bit more, and we can run things on it. So I can slash and find certain. I can use sort of find features. So me hitting slash will find all the slashes or the roots effectively. So we're sort of running within that. Right, let's get out of that. I can come out with that by pressing Q for quit. Cool. So we've covered cat, more and less. Don't worry, there's not going to be a dog. But each of those do have numerous options. So for example, cat tac n or -n, then .bash will number the lines. So underscore history. So that tells you what line a certain bit of text is on. Oh, I didn't need to do Q because we don't need to quit out a cat, whereas we needed to with more and less, more or less. Cool. And each of these commands do have more options available. So I can either do cat tac help, and it tells me the summary of it. But there's also one other sort of help feature available, which is all written up here. I've managed to avoid it for now, but we've got tac help, or sometimes it's -help or -h for the help option. And we've got man, which is manual pages, which is a manual for any command. So if I type mancat, I do like this stage. So mancat, so this is the manual to look at the command cat, and it's basically telling me up all options. So me using -n then is the same as numbering all the output lines. So we're sort of, it says command, which is cat, then we have the options, then we have the file. So it tells you obviously the synopsis here is telling our almost command construction. Cat concatenate, so that's when we push two things together. The file and print are the standard output. That's the true definition. I didn't want to bring in too many technical words at this point. I wanted to stay nice and general with these commands, but as soon as you do start, like, for example, this course isn't fit for you going straight into a technical interview, and you would, if someone said, tell me about the cat command, you go, well, I can look it up on Mancat, but yeah, cat stands for concatenate, and it's the printing of the standard output. They'd expect that level of definition. Cool. Loads of different options available here. You can jump line by line, and we've got the write-up. Cool. So in effect, I'm going to sort of regress slightly, but each of these commands is a tool in itself. Man is a tool. The manual command is a program, is a software. It looks at all the different text documents, pulls it in front. So each of them is a program in itself. So even though ls is quite a simple little command, it's got a full tool library behind it. Cool. And that's where you start. When you look at that side of it, that's when you look at the programming side. And when we look at later on in the course, when we look at Python and Bash scripting, we're using this type of programming language or scripting language. Cool. So each of these is a program in itself. Just wanted to give a little bit of respect to each of these different programs that we're running, even though we're running them as a lot of different ones. And some have been around 60s, some have been refined, some have been amazing and really powerful tools, especially when we use the additional options. And we can push them together. So if I wanted to, no, not yet. I'm not going to start pushing commands together using pipe just yet. So we've done more, we've done less. Strings, I mentioned that earlier. Let's see if that's installed. It's either string or strings. No, so I have to install strings. So I'm going to hold out on that. Okay, because it's asking me to install it. Should I? Yeah. So I'm going to jump a bit further down. I'm not going to play with my files just yet. I'm going to do one of the cool stuff. I'm going to install my updates, and I'm also going to install a file. So the way we do that is apt-get install and then the program name. For example, Vim. Hold on. I'm just going to make that small because it's Vim it's case sensitive. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to notice something. So to install, for me to install strings, said we've got to install binutils, so utilities for the bin directory. So for me to do that, it says sudo apt install binutilities. The reason sudo's involved, I'll show you. So apt install binutils. It says you do not have permissions. Are you root? And I'm not root because I want to use the lowest level possible. So we bring in this command sudo. So sudo is basically su and do. When we do su, we can switch user, and we can switch users as root. Normally you just do su and you can log straight as root, providing you know the password. But switch user, and do is saying run this command as root. Providing you're as part of, it used to be, I'm going to slow down a little bit. So sudo allows you to run commands as root, but you've got to put it in front of each of the commands to run it. So it's a controlled process. It's very good. But you've got to be a part of like a user group that allows you this like a security group that allows you to have these permissions. So it used to be the sudoers group, and I think that's what I've written here. As part of the sudoers, hold on, let me just bring it along. It used to be part of sudoers, but now it's the wheelers group, or the wheels. No, it's the wheels group. So you need to be part of the wheels group to do that. And normally when you create a user and you build your Ubuntu box from the ISO, you'll be allocated as part of the sudoers or the wheels group. Sudoers is old, it's now the wheels group. So it lets me run sudo because I'm a part of that group. It will ask for a password as an extra layer of authentication, but it's not that big. So apt install binutils. So we have to connect to the connected to the internet for this, and the public Ubuntu repository, and it'll ask for my password, and then it grabs it. So we could have done, I could have added loads of extra options onto the end of that. I'm going to go back and show you. So it's asking me, are you sure you want to continue? Do you have enough space? And this is the location. I'm just going to Control Z out of that, or Control C, to terminate that connection. So if you ever, the bit of get out of jail free card, Control C or Control Z gets you out of anything. So just going to add that in. Cool. So if I want to do that and not get prompted, I just want to add -y, and as the option, and it'll just crack on and install. So you can see how powerful these little options are. Brilliant. So now we're installing it. So strings should be installed. So if we run strings against that same file, it'll load each of the strings out from that file. So if I do strings.bash _history, cool. So that's like pulling things out. So that'll run, that's a text document. So it's just going to open up a text document. Not that interesting, but we can run it against some, like an image, for example, and you can really see if they're obfuscating any text files within that. So that's like a big CTF thing. So strings is quite a good sort of thing to run against. I've run against it in a production environment just to see what's contained in a file, for example, without opening it. So you can run it against a file without actually opening it or executing it. Brilliant. So we've spoken about. Let's go a bit further. We brushed on a lot very quickly there. So cat more, and then less is a feature-rich version of more. We've run strings. We've run clear. I've run clear loads. If I type it clear, and there we go. Next one, I'm going to do echo. So echo is a repeater. So echo Tom, and it prints Tom. Cool. So we're going to use that echo to create a file, basically a text file, and add this to it using redirects. So the next bit is we're going to talk about redirects. So echo is quite a powerful tool, and so is touch. Touch is a command that can basically create files on the fly. So touch names. So if I ll on that, I can see on my home area I've got a file called names. If I open it up, cat, because it's good to use cat for small files, cat names. Oh, cat, there's no such, oh, it's names. There we go, and there's nothing in it. So if I echo Tom and then forward that using these redirects, and it's quite important we know the difference, because one's very powerful and one can overwrite an entire file. So if I echo Tom again, there we go, I can see Tom, and if I echo Tom and then look at these redirects, this is like to push the result of something into something else. So I've got redirect and overwrites text in a file, or redirects and appends, basically adds to the bottom of a file. So I just want to add a couple of names into this text file. So I'm going to go Tom into names. I'm going to go Igor names. Sally, and I'm just pressing up each time now just to get these names in. And Dave. Cool. Hello. You can see my names file just highlighted just there. And if I cat names, we should see the list of names there. So you can see the order that I've put them in. I can strings on that. I can cat -n on names, and also I can change direction into root, so I can be at the top of the tree. Look at this. Look at all the files here. This is the full top level from root, all the folders. So we've got bin, which contains basically a lot of the operating system. Boot is the boot record. We've got CD-ROM. etc is where a lot of the files are stored. Home we've already been into. We've got root, which is root, which is where the home folder of the root user is. We've got run, sbin, and that's a soft link. System temp is basically temporary storage, which every time you reboot, it'll delete files from there. User is another user file. There's loads. etc is a very important one. That's where a lot of the password files are stored, for example. So if I go, I'm currently at the top of the tree root. I can go ll and do tilde to look at the so I'm starting to use different step-ins now from different locations. So that's my home folder, and I can see names is there. So if I go cat -n and tilde/names, there we go. I can see the line numbering, or I can do -n at the end as well. So this shell is quite forgiving about where you place the options. It's got the same result. Cool. Depends totally up to you where you want to put the option and where you want to do things from. Just providing you know where you are, and we run pwd to know where we are. So we're at root. We're at the top of the tree. Brilliant. So we've done redirect, and I'm just going to show you how to overwrite the entire file, which is bad. So I'm going to echo. I am taking over this file. Just imagine you're a bad threat actor, and then if I go overwrite, so it's single, which overwrites the entire file, and I go so I go tilde names, and I go quickly, if I do cat names again, and they've taken over the file with that redirect. So that's quite a naughty little thing. So if you want to overwrite the entire file, you can use a single redirect. If I wanted to append the date, for example, there's a command called date, which I'll add into this. I don't know if I've added that in. No, we're nearly there anyway. So date, if I wanted to append date to the bottom, so using double, which redirects and appends to the bottom, and I go tilde, because I'm in a totally different area now, tilde names, and then I can cat on that again, so I can cat tilde names, so it's home directory names, and I'm just going to look at the file. So I've said I'm taking over the file, and I've also added the date to the bottom. So that's quite handy actually, especially when you're working with log files. You can add that into a script to append the date, and obviously the date is set by the local machine and its NTP server. Cool, which runs on their UDP port number 123. Honestly, your head gets full of random knowledge. So we've got this text file. We're going to change directory tilde, and we're going to right. So I want this names file is in the wrong location. I want to move it, and standardly for moving a file is mv move. So I want to move. So we've covered off this a touch. We've covered off the redirect. So I'm about to cover moving a file, and it moves very powerful. So I want to move a file initially. Move. So I'm going to move it from the home directory into the desktop, and I'm going to see it appear on the desktop of the virtual machine, the Ubuntu machine I've got here. So if I go move names, because I'm in the same directory, and then it goes source destination. So I go names, and where do I want to move it to? I want to move it to /desktop and move it there. And I don't, if I was to type anything here, it'd get renamed to whatever I type here. So if I wanted to name it name, because now I haven't got any names in there at the minute, I've just taken all the names out, and there's only a single entry in there saying I'm taking over it. So I've actually moved it and renamed it at the same time. So if I go change directory tilde, change directory tilde, I'm in the same place. Change directory desktop, because I don't need to do that. I could actually do just with knowledge of where we're playing with, and that's probably initially the hardest thing to get over, is knowing where to do things or how to place it. And luckily our shells are quite forgiving a lot of the time. So if I ll on that, I can see name. If I cat name, if I more name, it's the same result. If I less name, because it's all very small, I have to quit out of less, but we can see effectively we've got name there. I can copy it, so I've moved it and renamed it. If I want to rename that now within the same directory, we use move again. So if I want to rename it, we go move from name, which is source, to destination names, and L on that. So it's now called names. Cool. I'm going to copy names and rename it as names, as name. So I'm just going to name it as a new text document. So if I copy, we use CP, copy. So copy and name. So you have to have the original source, and we could do multiple files there. So we could copy, and then you can have multiple files. It's not just the one. copy, and then within the same directory, so I can actually do that if I wanted to. It's totally up to you, and go name. You can use whatever combination of relative path or half relative path and just dumping it into currently where we are. And cool, so I've copied it. I'm going to copy it into a different location as well, just to show you. So I'm going to do all this from root. I'm going to change directory from the top of the tree and use different methods, just absolute or relative or shortcut. So I'm going to copy name, move it into documents and name it file taken over. So copy absolute path, so it's home user, capital D for desktop, name. It's about like picturing that file tree in your head just all the way down. I know we've only played with home and user, but we can see other areas. So we're copying that, and then I'm going to copy it using shortcut. So document and call it and we're giving it a file extension as well, so we could open it up in other file types. So if I pwd, just check, I know I'm in root, and if I cat I'm going to use relative path now. So I'm going to say from current directory, I'm going to go home, and tabbing it proves it works. Home, user, documents, easy, and then take, and then it completes itself, and then we can see it's there. So that is the taken over file. Obviously that's now technically, if we're in the real world, I'd consider that as an indicator of compromise and we want to remove any evidence, or vice versa, if you're in a pen test, for example, and you want to clean up after yourself, so we've got to remove documents. So what we can do is remove documents a few different ways really. I'm going to individually remove a document, and the way we remove a document, and I can't say enough, is rm. So we can remove the document or directories with directories, files with files within. There's loads of different ways. So I'll do something at the end just to show you a nice little cleanup of our system and never make it work again. So I'm going to remove it from root. So I'm in root, and if I do rm star here, technically it'll try to remove everything, but we haven't got permission. So it's saying this is directory as well. We need to do space -d for that, which doesn't let us. Thank goodness we lock one as a user, not root. Because if we were root, it would probably accept it. So if I accept without -d, the option. But if I go rm and then go home user document double tab will show me files within that. So I've removed that file. If I go, I can see it again. Instead of doing cat should fail because there's no file, but I'll also do ll just to see what's in that folder. So within my documents, there's nothing. Oh, it's because we're trying to ll on a file. ll within now has got nothing. But also we've been working within our desktop area, and we can see the two files we created earlier. And if I just hate using the GUI on Linux, you shouldn't be using it, but we can see the file there. Cool. And instead of using like a file editor, we can use like various text editors. So with Vi, Vim, Nano. Vi is the inbuilt one, which comes native. That's why it's good to know it. Vim is the advanced version of Vim, and Nano is quite a nice one to use. There's also gedit as well. There's quite a few. Cool. Back to this. So I'll quickly get into Vi very, very quickly. But I'm going to chop to desktop just to get into these ones. I can see these files. I'm going to quickly open up one of these and go into it. So if I go Vim names, Vim name, I can edit this by, I hit I to insert at that point. Cool. And then escape right quit. This is where everything goes a bit wrong, and I shouldn't be really be introducing that, but just to let you know, there are text editors within Linux. So that's how we remove a file and edit it as well. I'm going to show you how to remove lots of files using a wildcard, and this is something that is up here in our notes. So we've got Wildcard here, and it's quite a powerful thing. You might have seen me use RM star a minute ago, and that means everything. We can use question marks as individual characters. So if I do, for example, I can go you can see these. I can RM and question mark. That won't work because there's nothing called n single question mark. So that is single character. If I do n123, that shouldn't be removed because that's got a fourth letter. I hope. So if I do RM, have confidence in your convictions, and then LL, we should be left with names. Brilliant. Now if I do RMN Wildcard, then that name should have gone. LL is gone. So that's really good. We can use single characters, question marks, or wildcard, remove everything. And we can use sort of like, even put an S there and it would have removed both, but it would have removed both anyway. Cool, so I'm just going to add question mark. Brilliant. As long as I include all the things that I cover in these notes, it's pretty clear. Cool, so we've covered redirects, we've covered touch, creating files on the fly, covered a very brief look at Vim and Vi. That's a separate video by itself. It'll be a short one, but it just don't want to break anyone yet, because that you can get lost in that world. So wget is to download a file. We covered sudo and apt-get install. So I did sudo apt install, and it was utils before. But if I do nmap, for example, but apt is short for apt-get. So if you ever hear apt-get and apt, it's basically the same thing. So if I capital P my power password, and then we just installed nmap, and it's saying it's already installed. So I'm just going to run nmap against my own machine quickly. And it's always better to run nmap and even though it's not Calibox, it's still a tool. It's still a bit of software that we can use on a lot of Linux distros. So nmap on, if I do 127.0.0.1, it's easier. Instead of doing it on the actual IP address, because I don't know off the top of my head. Oh, sendmap, sudo. What's wrong with that? Sudo cannot find nmap. That's why, because I've spelled it wrong. Cool. So technically I've only got one port open. 631. Interesting. IPP. I've not seen that one before. Let's see what that is. That's quite interesting. 2 seconds. This is sort of. Oh. Oh, printing. Oh, okay. Less of that. Cool. So nmap's really useful to see what's going on. And we've covered install. I'm just going to cover quickly. So as well as if you wanted to make sure everything was patched, there's 2 ways you can do that. apt-get update and apt-get upgrade. Update is for your patches. For your software, upgrade is more for OS related things. So sudo apt-get update. You can run the 2 together. You can do apt-get upgrade and apt-get update. So hopefully this should run quite quickly. And we're done because I've run that recently. And upgrade. And I can do tap -y, and that's just going to auto run through it. Upgrade, invalid upgrade option. Get upgrade. That's if you spell it correctly. And it is just about getting it right. So there's no upgrades to follow, which is good. And last thing I'm going to show you is change directory to root. And I'm going to be naughty here. So I'm going to delete the entire system and see what happens. So RM, you can see what. I'm going to run it as sudo without running it as root. So su, if I hit enter, I can log in as root. And it's not going to let me because I've done the password wrong on purpose. Because I'm going to run it as sudo rm space -r star, capital R is recursive, delete everything. Okay, so can't delete a lot because it's directory, but oh, I've deleted a lot of other stuff. So I've deleted all the files, not directories, and now I've just crashed my Ubuntu. I'm sort of shivering doing that, but I've just deleted my Ubuntu machine. So that brings us up to a nice little summary now of, we're sort of covered off a lot of the base commands. There's still quite a few more to cover off, but as a core, that's really good. And we've covered off a lot of the sort of navigating around the system, working with files, not really editing the files as such, but we've covered off a lot of the basics. So thanks very much for watching. Stand by for part 3.